Today, we're plunging straight into one of the most baffling, genuinely terrifying mysteries of modern history. We're setting our scene on February 2nd, 1959. Picture this. We're in the brutal, unforgiving pitch black of the Ural Mountains in Soviet Russia. On that frozen mountain slope, 9 highly experienced hikers have just set up their camp for the night. Now, these folks had survived incredibly harsh conditions before, right? They knew exactly what they were doing. But that night, something completely inexplicable happened.
So, it's February 2nd. These hikers are hunkered down. But despite all their wilderness survival skills, something deeply, profoundly terrifying occurred in the dark. It was an event so startling, so overwhelmingly horrific, that they did the unthinkable. They sliced their own tent open from the inside. Think about that for a second. They didn't even try to use the door. They literally cut their way out just to escape into the void. And out there, it was minus 30 degrees Celsius. That is 22 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. The sheer horror here is that these expert mountaineers fled into this deadly freezing night air barefoot. They left behind their boots, their heavy coats, their food, the whole shebang. All 9 of them died out there in the dark. And to this very day, the reasons are still entirely unknown. So how on earth does a team of experts end up like this? Let's break down the facts.
This group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student and a really experienced mountaineer. He put together a rock-solid team of 7 men and 2 women. Again, not amateurs. These were people who had spent years in the harshest wilderness.
Let's look at the timeline, because it reveals a pretty chilling delay. They headed out from Sverdlovsk on January 23rd, aiming for Otorten Mountain. Now, this was a grade 3 trek. That was the absolute highest difficulty level in Soviet Russia at the time. Their extreme competence is exactly what makes their missed return on February 12th so alarming. When they didn't show up, a massive search party was organized. But it wasn't until February 26th, 35 days after they first set out, that the searchers finally stumbled upon that ripped tent. So when rescuers arrived on February 26th, they found this eerie, completely silent camp. The tent, like we talked about, was ripped open from the inside. But what really confused the searchers was the gear. Inside that ruined tent sat all of their crucial survival equipment. Rations, heavy boots, insulated winter coats, just sitting there, abandoned. Whatever frightened them out into the blizzard scared them so badly that a guaranteed freeze felt safer than staying inside.
The grim locations of the bodies tell this terrifying story of a panicked scatter. First, about 1.5 kilometers away from the tent, near the remains of a really small, desperate fire, searchers found the first 2 bodies. They were barefoot, dressed only in their underwear. Next, 3 more bodies were found on a line between that fire and the tent, positioned almost like they were making a desperate, failed attempt to crawl back to camp. But the remaining 4 hikers, they were completely missing until May. They were eventually discovered buried under 4 meters of snow in a nearby ravine. Now, a panicked flight into a blizzard in mere socks is baffling enough, but the physical evidence gets far, far stranger.
For the hikers found near the fire and on the slope, the cause of death was exactly what you'd expect: hypothermia. The cold claimed them. But when medical examiners looked at the 4 bodies recovered from the ravine, well, the autopsies revealed something virtually impossible.
Externally, these 4 bodies had absolutely no wounds, 0 bruising. We're talking completely unblemished skin. But internally, crushed ribs, fractured skulls. The medical examiner actually compared the massive, blunt force required to cause these internal injuries to a high-speed car crash. Yet, whatever crushed them from the inside out left absolutely no physical marks on the outside. How is that even possible?
And then there were these profoundly disturbing secondary clues. Some of the bodies in the ravine were wearing torn, mismatched pieces of clothing. It looked like the survivors had literally stripped garments from their already dead friends in a frantic bid to stay warm. But here is the most jarring detail of all. Several pieces of their clothing tested positive for elevated levels of radioactivity. Let that sink in. Radioactivity. In the middle of the frozen, isolated wilderness.
So faced with impossible injuries, radioactive clothing, and 0 witnesses, the Soviet government did what you might expect. They quickly closed the investigation. The official recorded cause of death was incredibly vague and honestly pretty ominous. They called it an unknown compelling force. I mean, that tells us absolutely nothing about what actually took the lives of these 9 experts. It effectively just buried the truth right there in the snow.
Over the decades, several primary theories have emerged to try and explain these bizarre anomalies at Dyatlov Pass. Let's impartially look at the data driving each idea.
The most widely accepted scientific theory today is the katabatic snow slab. Basically, it's a sudden avalanche-like collapse of hard, packed snow on a mountain slope. The idea here is that a massive block of snow silently shifted and fell onto the tent, terrifying the hikers and causing some of those crushing internal injuries. But looking at the whole picture, the critical counter-evidence remains really strong. Rescuers found absolutely no avalanche debris at the scene, none. And other than those frantic knife cuts, the tent was actually structurally intact.
Another theory explores a terrifying psychological trigger: infrasound. Infrasound consists of low-frequency sound waves, which theoretically could be produced by heavy winds moving over the unique dome-like topography of that specific mountain. Now, while humans can't consciously hear infrasound, we can definitely feel it. Scientific studies show it can cause severe panic, intense hallucinations, and an overwhelming sense of dread. Proponents of this theory argue it's really the only logical explanation for why 9 rational, survival-trained adults would be plunged into such blind terror that they'd sprint into certain death in the dark.
But when you look at all the leading theories side by side, the snow slab, infrasound panic, or even some unnamed presence on the mountain, there's one theory that neatly connects several of the weirdest loose threads: secret Soviet military testing. Covert weapons testing in the area could explain the sudden flashes of light that were actually reported by other campers miles away. It would explain the sheer concussive force that crushed the hikers' chests without bruising the skin. It definitely explains the completely bizarre presence of radioactivity on their clothes. And for sure, it explains the swift, vague government cover-up.
In 2019, the Russian government actually reopened the Dyatlov Pass case to look at the evidence with modern eyes. After their review, they officially concluded that it was, most likely, a snow avalanche. However, a vast majority of independent researchers and scientists reject this conclusion outright. They point out, quite rightly, that an avalanche simply cannot account for all the bizarre anomalies we've just covered.
So at the end of the day, we're left with a chilling, undeniable truth. 9 went up, none came down alive. Whatever they encountered in the darkness of the Ural Mountains was so terrifying, so overwhelmingly threatening, that guaranteed death in the sub-zero snow somehow felt like a safer option than staying inside their tent for one more second.
The facts are laid out, but the conclusion is entirely missing. So, what's your theory? Was it a freak act of nature, a military secret gone horribly wrong, a terrifying trick of the mind, or something else entirely? I really want you to drop your own theories in the comments below. I literally read every single one. And if this explainer helped you grasp the dark complexities of the Dyatlov Pass incident, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into buried mysteries. Until next time, stay curious and keep analyzing the facts.